A price row arrives. The symbol column says 3 letters and nothing else. Which security does that row describe? There is no safe answer, and that is not pedantry. A ticker is not a company. A legal entity identifier is not a security. An international securities number is generally not a venue listing. Even an internal permanent key is only durable if nobody ever recycles it. Join on the wrong one, and you'll not get an error. You will get a fabricated return, a duplicated position, or a filing attached to the wrong issuer, and it will look completely normal. So this lesson builds a crosswalk that makes those boundaries visible. First, the identity ladder, because most symbology bugs are not a bad string. They are 2 correct strings naming different kinds of thing. Then the 2 clocks every mapping assertion carries. Then the 3 outcomes a lookup is allowed to return, including the 2 that are not answers. We will not promise one magical universal identifier. The complete article is linked in the video description. On the fintechbuilder.com, it carries the full data contract, edge cases, source code, worked examples, and a guided identifier lab. Start with the ladder. A legal entity is an organization recognized in a jurisdiction. An issuer is a role that entity plays in an issuance, and the 2 are not always the same party. An instrument is the legal and economic set of rights that gets issued. A share class is one set of rights inside an equity structure. A listing is an admission to a market. And a trading line is the specific tradable representation tied to a venue, a currency, a session, and a settlement convention. Read that as a relationship graph, not a chain of aliases. Now match the schemes to those layers, because each authority names exactly one of them. A legal entity identifier names the entity and never the security it issued. An international securities number and a 9-character issue number both name the instrument, not automatically a venue listing. A share class identifier can group several market contexts. A composite identifier names a country market context. A ticker names a trading line, which is why a venue qualifier is mandatory. A market identifier code names the venue itself. This matrix is deliberately conservative. If a provider defines a different level, build a named adapter rather than weakening the model. Which is why a bear symbol is not a key at all. Take those same 3 letters on 2 different venues. On one exchange, they name one trading line. On another exchange, in another currency, they name a completely different one. Same string, different security, and any join that ignores the venue will silently merge them. So the key has to carry the assignment scheme, the value, the identity layer you're asking about, and the venue context. For fields, not one. Only then is the question actually answerable. Every mapping assertion carries 2 clocks, and they answer different questions. The validity clock asks when the mapping applies in the world. The knowledge clock asks which revision your system could have known at the moment you were asking. Those come apart the instant anything is corrected. Suppose revision 1 says the symbol maps to line alpha. A correction published later says it should have been line beta. A replay dated before that correction must still select revision 1, even though today's database already contains revision 2. Otherwise, today's knowledge leaks backwards into yesterday's result. Selection happens in 2 steps in this order. First, pick the latest revision whose availability time is at or before your knowledge cutoff. Then, and only then, check whether that revision is still active and whether your validity instant falls inside its interval. That interval is half open. Valid from is inclusive. Valid to is exclusive. That is not a detail. It is what lets 2 consecutive assignments meet at exactly one boundary without both matching at once. An open-ended interval simply has no upper bound yet. Run the canonical replay. The question is that ticker on the NASDAQ venue at the trading line layer, valid in the middle of June, asked with a knowledge cutoff 5 days later. For assertions exist. Revision 1 supports line alpha and has been available since December, so it counts. Revision 2 corrects the target to beta, but it does not become available until June the 25th, so at this cutoff, it does not exist yet. A July assignment is already known, but its validity has not started. And the London row is a different venue qualified key entirely. The answer is alpha, resolved, with its evidence attached. Now change one thing. Leave the economic instant exactly where it was in the middle of June, and move only the knowledge cutoff past the correction date. Nothing about the world changed. The security did not move, but the evidence available to you did, and the same query now resolves to line beta. That is the entire point of keeping the second clock. Your yesterday answer and your today answer are both correct for different knowledge states, and a system that cannot express that will quietly rewrite its own history. Put the knowledge cutoff back and move the other clock instead. Push the economic instant to the 1st of July, exactly at the boundary. The earlier assignment ends at that instant, and because the interval is half open, it no longer matches. The July assignment begins at that instant, and it does. So the answer becomes line gamma. 1 boundary, 2 assignments, no overlap, and no gap. That is what the half-open convention buys you, and it is why an inclusive upper bound would have returned 2 candidates instead of 1. A lookup is allowed to return 3 things, and only one of them is an answer. Resolved means every applicable assertion supports exactly 1 target. Unmapped means the evidence has no applicable assertion at those 2 clocks, and the correct response is to say so, not to substitute the raw symbol. Ambiguous means known assertions support different targets. Do not let sort order decide that. Do not pick the highest confidence one either, because confidence classifies evidence. It does not rank candidates. Preserving the ambiguity is the honest result, and downstream systems can then handle it deliberately. So what does every revision actually have to carry? The source scheme, value, identity layer, and venue context. A same layer canonical target, because a mapping may never cross layers. The validity interval, an observation time and an availability time. Active or canceled status. A confidence classification, a check digit status, and the assignment authority with its source document. That last pair is what makes the answer auditable rather than merely computed. If you cannot say which document supports a mapping, you do not have a crosswalk. You have a guess with good formatting. A word about check digits, because they're trusted far past what they support. A securities number ends in a check character. An issue number ends in a mathematical check of the previous 8. Both confirm that the string is internally consistent. Neither one proves that the assignment exists, that the authority actually issued it, that the descriptive record is current, that it belongs to this entity, or that your license permits you to redistribute it. So this implementation consumes a check digit status from an ingestion adapter. Invalid rejects the batch. Not verified stays visible as a stated limitation. The resolver itself is short, and the order of its steps is the whole algorithm. Validate the query and every revision. Group revisions by assertion. Select the latest revision available at the knowledge cutoff. Match the scheme, the value, the identity layer, and the venue together. Apply active status and half-open validity at the economic instant. Collect the distinct canonical targets. Then return unmapped, resolved, or ambiguous with the evidence that supports it. Malformed timestamps, reversed intervals, cross-layer targets, or broken revision order are contract errors, and they raise immediately rather than degrading quietly. Finally, the traps that put this in production incorrectly. Joining a symbol without venue, currency, or time. Using an entity identifier as though it named the issued security. Treating an instrument number as one market listing, treating a share class identifier as a venue-specific line, choosing the highest confidence target when assertions genuinely conflict, applying today's correction inside yesterday's simulation, and treating a valid checksum as proof of assignment. Underneath all of them is the same mistake. A reliable security master does not ask which identifier is most permanent. It asks which authority names which layer, in what context, during which interval, and on what evidence available at the time. Continue the learning path at thefintechbuilder.com, where the full identity continuity articles, source code, visuals, and playgrounds connect this topic to ticker change chain resolution.